So here's the thing. I am not a horror movie fan. I have nothing against people that love horror movies, I'm just not one of them. My wife loves horror movies, but I just can't get into it. Most horror movies for me are silly. They're blood and guts nonsense. The stories seem kind of silly. They're just excuses to present lots and lots of gore, which isn't scary, it's just gross. Or it's just constant screaming, people making dumb decisions. Or they're so overtly bad at presenting their stories they're almost comedic to me. And you know what? I'm kind of a chicken. I don't like being scared. I want to be entertained. I don't want to be scared. But that being said, every now and then there's a film that comes along that earns its fear the old-fashioned way. The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's 1980 adaptation of the Stephen King novel, is one of those rare exceptions. It's a horror film that doesn't rely on cheap tricks, splatter effects. Instead, it builds its terror like a symphony, slowly, methodically, one eerie note at a time. No monsters, minimal gore. It's just an unrelenting atmospheric movie that sneaks into your soul and makes you feel uneasy. And you're not even quite sure why you're feeling uneasy because Stanley Kubrick plays a lot of tricks on you during the movie, which I will explain. I like stories that breathe a little bit. I like the tension that doesn't need a violin screech to announce to me when I'm supposed to be scared. The Shining is basically a masterpiece at that. It doesn't do those cliche horror movie things. It's an elegant, hypnotic descent into isolation and madness. The movie has very little death in it. I mean, there are ghosts, but there's very little slasher death moments in the movie. The film stars Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall as Wendy, and Danny Lloyd as their son Danny. Before they even get to the Overlook Hotel, we meet Danny's imaginary friend Tony, a little boy who lives in my mouth, as Danny explains it, which is not exactly the kind of thing you want to hear from your kid. Tony talks through Danny's finger in a way that's sort of adorable and terrifying at the same time. While brushing his teeth, Danny has a flash of what's going to happen at the Overlook Hotel. He gets a vision of the blood coming out of the elevator. Creepy as all hell, and he sort of goes comatose after that. A doctor checks in afterwards, and we get our first glimpse of how fragile this family already is going into the movie. Wendy nervously explains that Jack once accidentally hurt Danny during a drunken outburst, and he's been sober since then. She kind of excuses it away. She says it with sort of a brittle optimism of someone trying to convince herself that everything is fine. She has a cigarette with ash that's way too long, and it looks like the thing's going to fall off any second. That's on purpose. It's just one little extra piece of tension, just one little tiny element, the cigarette ash that's too long. It just shows that the movie is just teetering on the edge. There are a million little things like that in the movie that are all done on purpose. Once the Torrance family heads to the Overlook Hotel for the winter, because Jack is going to be the caretaker of this hotel, things slide from mildly weird to run for your life terrifying. Stephen King famously did not like the adaptation of this book. He thought that Jack Torrance in the movie was sort of crazy from the beginning, but I actually think that works because the Overlook Hotel already is having an effect on him before he gets there. The Overlook Hotel chooses him. They don't say this in the movie, but I've watched it a million times. I get the feeling that the Overlook Hotel chose Jack because he was the perfect person that the ghosts could sink their teeth into, and I think it works. The hotel knew that they could corrupt him, and that's the key. Let's talk about that opening sequence because it's one of the most unsettling things in cinema. And it's simple. A tiny yellow Volkswagen Beetle winding through the vast, empty Rocky Mountains towards the Overlook Hotel, where we get a low kind of a score. It's brooding, it's atmospheric, there's some screeches in the background, and it just presents dread to you right away. The scenery is stunning, but it feels wrong, too wide, too open, like the earth itself is holding its breath. The whole drive feels like a one-way trip into isolation, and you can almost sense the Overlook Hotel leaning forward saying, "Mine." When Jack arrives at the job interview, everything looks normal, but nothing feels normal. The office is warm and bright, and Jack's smile is too wide, his politeness is too rehearsed, and then there's a blink and you'll miss it moment that I don't think a lot of people notice. In the lobby, Jack Nicholson's character is reading a Playgirl magazine. That's a really odd choice. It's an adult pornographic magazine with naked men. Gotta remember, this movie's made in 1980. Attitudes towards same-sex relationships were very, very different back then. And it wasn't put there to be a homophobic thing. It was just there to be different. And just to put something in your subconscious that something is just slightly not the way it's supposed to be. Once they move in, the hotel itself becomes the villain. Not through ghosts. Well, there are ghosts, but it's not like jump scare ghosts. It's atmospheric. The layout of the building doesn't make any sense. It literally is impossible. There are hallways that lead to places that the hallway couldn't go. It doesn't make spatial sense. Kubrick designed it that way on purpose. Just like the Torrances, it slowly loses its grip on what is real. Every hedge maze outside is a visual echo of the hotel's labyrinth inside of the hotel. It's a trap, both inside and outside, and once it gets you, it won't let you go. Little Danny Torrance, of course, is the only one who really understands what is happening. His shining, his psychic ability, lets him sense the hotel's dark past. Now, he doesn't understand everything, but he knows that this hotel is a bad place, where Jack and Wendy really don't get that yet. Those eerie twin girls, the blood-filled elevator, all the ghosts in the Overlook have collected over the years. They're not jump scares, they're echoes of trauma replaying like broken records, and I think it works fantastically. And easily one of the most likable characters in cinema, we get Dick Halloran, played by Scatman Crothers, the hotel's chef and fellow shiner. He has the psychic ability too, and he can tell that Danny has the shine. He warns Danny to stay away from room 237. His calm delivery makes it even creepier. And we can talk about how even the kitchen in this movie feels menacing. Stanley Kubrick deliberately designed a shot where we follow Dick Halloran around the kitchen as he's explaining where things are, how they work, but they move in an unnatural sort of labyrinthian way where their movements really don't make sense. They don't go anywhere in a straight line. And they do that on purpose. The movie makers do that on purpose to make you feel disoriented. At one moment, they go into a walk-in freezer where you go in and it's on one side. When they come out, the freezer's on the opposite side. That's not an accident. That's not an editing mistake. That's in there on purpose to plant the subconscious thing in your mind that something is just not quite right. You don't notice it consciously, but it puts something there that makes you feel uneasy without you knowing why you're feeling uneasy, and I think that's great. The placement of the knives on the wall behind him as he's talking, just kitchen knives, nothing scary about it, but they're presented almost like they're weapons pointing at Danny in a threatening manner. It's brightly lit, the hotel looks gorgeous, it doesn't look scary. It's not filled with spider webs and monsters except for a couple nightmare sequences, but it looks bright and colorful and well lit. It doesn't look like a horror movie. But that's the trick. It's making you feel that the ordinary stuff even is out to get you. When Danny's riding his big wheel bike tricycle through the hotel, you get the audio of the rolling over carpet, rolling over hardwood, rolling over carpet, sort of rhythmic like a heartbeat. He goes around corners and the rooms don't make sense. They have hotel room doors where in a previous shot, they show there's only so much space. There's not enough room for the hotel to be there, but there's a hotel room door. There shouldn't be room for a hotel room here. Little things like that play tricks with your mind. The famous elevator that the blood comes out of, they show the other side of the wall and there's not enough room there for there to be an elevator. There's a shot where Jack Nicholson is walking through this gorgeous, gigantic open room. I think they called it the Colorado room. There's vistas outside. It looks all fantastic, beautiful. And then they get to the end of it and you see people walking down a hallway. And they go what would be behind the outdoor scene. There's no hotel there, but they show the hallway going towards where there wouldn't be hotel. Movie's playing tricks on your mind. There's a sequence where Danny's watching television in a big wide open room. There's no electrical outlet. There's no cord. The TV's just on, as if the hotel itself was powering the TV. These are small details, but they add up and they play tricks with your head where even if something as simple as a basic conversation seems ominous. And the movie nails that better than any other movie I can think of. Once the family gets settled in, the ghosts start to do their thing. Most notably, Lloyd the bartender. Jack Nicholson, a recovering alcoholic, says something along the lines of, "I'd sell my soul for just a glass of beer." Poof, all of a sudden, there's a bartender. And Jack Nicholson happy as can be that there's a bartender to give him alcohol. It was shown earlier that he gets kind of temperamental when he drinks, so the hotel wants him to drink, or at least think he's drinking. We don't know if the ghosts are actually giving him alcohol or if he's just imagining it, but he definitely acts like he's really drinking, and the bartenders just smile. His politeness, just a little off. He's up to something, and we want to know what that is. And then there's the famous sequence where the waiter spills something on Jack Torrance. They go into the bathroom to clean it up, and that's where shit gets really creepy. This polite waiter, who is the father of the murdered girls, talks about how important being the caretaker is, and that he had to correct his family, and that maybe Jack Nicholson has to correct his family. And by correct, he means murder them. And it's just creepy as hell. It's not scary in a monsters jumping out at you kind of way. It's just an uncomfortable situation that gets more and more and more uncomfortable. And that creates the horror. There's something to be afraid of, but you don't quite understand what it is yet. The ghosts are up to something, but you don't quite understand what it is. And it builds and it builds and it builds until Jack snaps. And when he snaps, it is so much fun to watch. And Jack Nicholson gives a fantastic, epic, classic performance that I don't think has ever been topped. He is so good at playing the asshole who wants to murder his family, and you are genuinely afraid of him. When he's chasing his family with an axe later in the movie, you believe that he would kill them. It's not a scary monster that wants to kill you for no reason because it's a scary monster. It's a person who's gone crazy and he has ghosts tormenting him, and it presents itself in such a raw way that it just works. So even if you're not a horror movie fan, maybe especially if you're not a horror movie fan, I highly recommend The Shining. It's a little bit dated at times, but if you just think of it as a period piece, it works. It is one of the creepiest movies you will ever watch, and it is extremely well done. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'm very open to suggestions. What movies, shows, books would you like to see me talk about next? What's your opinion of The Shining? We didn't talk about that TV series remake. What did you think of that? Eric Wilford Watson signing out.